Well, I've never heard of this channel before, but it's got a fair amount of subscribers, and I've been told it's a good channel. It's got 30 views in a day, this video that I've been sent, and it's called The Michigan Primary Should Scare Republicans for 2024. Alrighty, I haven't seen this channel before. I don't know if I'm going to be, like, responding to this or debunking it, or if I'm just going to be reacting to it. But I guess I'll start it, and I'm going to turn around and grab a water really fast, because I'm thirsty. I ran out a minute ago.
The Michigan primary. Now, the Michigan primary is a primary that was very, very closely watched because there was a lot of conversation about how President Biden would perform when compared to the uncommitted option that gave voters an opportunity to express their discontent with President Biden. And all of the articles and all the discussion around the Michigan primary were very much focused on the Democratic side of things, looking at where President Biden...
How is the voter turnout, though? That's the big question, especially among Gen Z. Because if the voter, like, it doesn't matter if, like, 10 Democrats came out to vote and Biden got 81% of the votes. I guess it couldn't be 10, but you know what I mean. If 100 came out and he got 81% of the votes. Because, like, that's not enough people who care to vote for him proportionally when the general comes around for him to win. So that's the real question. I don't know how good the turnout was in Michigan yet.
Was analyzing was this good or bad for his election. And there are plenty of takes out there that really just get at the nitty-gritty when it comes down to the Michigan Democratic primary. But on the GOP side, I think there is also an equally interesting story to tell there. While there isn't as much media coverage around it, President Trump only won the Michigan Republican primary with 68% of the vote. This is a one-on-one race against him and Nikki Haley, and ultimately, he fell short of what the polls had predicted he would do in terms of margin and in terms of overall vote share. But it is at this county level that I think really displays the true weaknesses that Donald Trump has going into this presidential election. Rather than have a unified Republican Party, as it may seem when you look at the national numbers, when you take a look down at some of these more statewide elections and individual areas and pockets and regions of battleground states that are all too important for a President Trump re-election bid, you start to see exactly why there is concern about him winning re-election and why many people haven't solidified an electoral.
Interesting. I was under the impression that current polling was a lot more in favor of Trump than this. This is a good turnaround. Hey guys. Maybe it's not over. American democracy saved? Question mark?
Map that suggests that Donald Trump will absolutely win. With general election numbers like these, I think at the main surface level takeaway is that President Trump is doing exceptionally well compared to where he was 4 years ago today, or quite frankly, 8 years ago today, against Secretary Clinton. These Trump versus Biden polls show Donald Trump in the best performing position he has ever seen when it has come down to national opinion polling data of him against practically any Democrat. But I think what is the, caution point here is looking at the election results over the past couple of elections, whether it's primaries or 2023 election cycle or 2022 election cycle. Genuinely speaking, President Trump has not performed up to par, considering having so much of the institutional backing from the mainstream Republican Party, having a huge money advantage over his Republican opponents, and having the field nearly cleared entirely with every single dropped out candidate, with the exception of a few that are practically, non-consequential in this primary, endorse him in the 2024 election. Now, these Trump versus Biden polls are ones that I will also say, what is more important than polls are actual election results. And the Michigan GOP primary, I think, again, just further exemplifies what concern Republicans had when it came down to Donald Trump's electability. And this is the perfect state to do this case study on. Because on the Democratic front, I think we can have all these conversations about the uncommitted vote. But on the Republican side, it really was just a one-on-one race. It was Donald Trump and Nikki Haley. There was no consideration around uncommitted.
Dude, Nikki Haley said she was not dropping out of the race until it is over. Has that kept up? Oh, sorry. Oh, wrong pipe. Has that kept up? Has she kept up that promise? Is she still in the race? Because I'm pretty sure it's just over for her now, like mathematically, right? Like there's no way for her to win, period. Zip, zilch, nada.
was not the type of avenue that Republicans used or wanted to use to express their discontent with President Trump, because they had a mainstream candidate. It wasn't some estranged Minnesota representative or, or Marianne Williamson who had ran for president back in 2020. That's not what was happening on this Republican side. They had a viable candidate. And I think one thing you might note is that across the entire map of Michigan here, it seems very solid Trump. Right, you're looking at this red color here that has practically taken over the entirety of this state when it comes down to the GOP primary.
Yeah, Nikki Haley seems to be in it for the long run. She seems to be trying to pick up the more relatively moderate anti-Trump vote. I don't feel like that's a very good vote to tap into for the Republican Party right now, but she is free to do so. I guess she's just trying to start her political career in the limelight with this election. Maybe not, make it necessarily.
Nikki Haley did not win a single county. But you know what did happen? What happened was that in some of the most important counties, that Democrats...
Do you ever feel like you don't think Nikki Haley actually believes a woman could be elected by the Republican, electorate, right? You don't think that, most women who run as Republicans think that Republicans would overwhelmingly vote for them? Do they actually believe that? I'm actually curious. Do you think that's just them trying to get the attention of running for their own political career on a smaller scale? Or, come on. As a Republican, you have to know that, it is part of the ideology that they will not support a woman holding power on a national stage. I guess my state's still a little pissy about the whole Flint water thing. Yeah.
Democrats look at for victories and to rely on margins for victory. These counties
Michigan
in particular,
mentioned.
Suburban counties, college town counties, President Trump did the worst in these counties out of any other part of the state. I am often looking at places like Ann Arbor, where the University of Michigan lies, where a huge out-of-state student population registers to vote in the state of Michigan and does in fact turn out to vote, especially following the Dobbs v. Jackson decision. Another point to mention there too is that Ann Arbor is a part of the state that is already left-wing. It isn't just the college town that leads it that way. It is a part nearing the outskirts of Detroit that already started leaning more and more Democratic, as many other suburban areas have become. And so when I look at it here, we see that Donald Trump got 50% of the vote to Nikki Haley's 44%. I mean, literally just drop yourself in any other part of the state and you will see that that is an anomaly, especially the rural areas. I mean, even going up here to less significant, in terms of population, universities, smaller universities like Michigan Tech. You take a look up here, you couldn't even guess where it was based on vote turnout. And that's because the University of Michigan and the Ann Arbor city itself leans blue. And what that means is these Republicans here already have an inclination to lean more towards the center, already have an inclination to lean more towards Nikki Haley, and they absolutely did.
Nikki Haley voting Republicans, that's surprising. Nikki Haley voting Republicans could win Biden the election. Really think about it for a minute. These are people who are conservative leaning, but they aren't crazy cultists, and they're willing to compromise. They're just not willing to vote Democrat, I guess, but maybe they are. These are the types of people who are in the middle, who aren't part of the cult. Not every Republican's part of the cult. These are the people that can be the most reached. Hell, there are Republicans that recognize there is a market for non-Trump crazy Republicans out there. It's got to exist, Mitt Romney's a good example. He's called out the Trump craze a fair amount. He's not great, but he's called out the Trump craze.
I'll stop talking about Ann Arbor and the University of Michigan after just this point, that I think further exemplifies the true problem here, that Donald Trump, in his re-election bid, has come to realize that he is alienating college voters. And I know it doesn't seem like this matters a lot. I think that what we do here is just try to see where are there going to be dips in support for President Trump. And I think college students and college campuses are huge vote bases for Democratic Party support. And the University of Michigan is absolutely no different. They were critical in the 2020 election. They will be critical in the 2024 election.
It's a big part of why Republicans have basically waged war on higher education in general. They tell conservative content viewers don't go to college, and if you do, just go to a trade school or something. Don't go to one of those SJW woke factories, and they talk about how the professors are woke and the administration is woke, and it's, you can't believe anything you're taught there. They're just going to try to push their ideology down your throat or whatever they claim, right? It's very much a preemptive trying to keep young people from going into those spaces where they're going to learn and get exposed to new people and ideas that generally has young people falling fairly left-leaning by the end of the experience because, reality has a liberal bias and all.
And in the entirety of the University of Michigan campus, Donald Trump received just 19 votes. Not percent, 19 votes. Nikki Haley nearly quadrupled that. And so when I see that, and I see Nikki Haley doing tremendously better on a college campus, and although not super good, right?
Less than 100 Republicans in the whole campus, Jesus.
I think this truly shows just how democratic this campus is. Regardless, Donald Trump has a fundamental problem that he cannot win over and will likely not win over. These groups of voters that come the general election, that come the base in New Hampshire and Iowa, those 43% of Nikki Haley supporters that said, I will not vote for Donald Trump in the 2024 election if he is the general election nominee.
Oh,
it's becoming Haley or bust for these people. And genuinely, given that they've had the opportunity.
Michigan's an important state. Michigan is one of the states that won Biden the election in 2020. This is important. I like this analysis, too. This is well reasoned and good.
To express discontent multiple times and likely have. There is a case to be made here that they will, in fact, not vote for President Trump in the general election. And that also is a problem. Because in order for Donald Trump to win Michigan, he would rely nearly entirely on a collapse in Democratic Party turnout. What this Michigan Democratic primary showed us was that the Uncommitted campaign did not hit their benchmark, but still made a point. Clearly, something should come of this if you're looking at it from just the high-level strategist point of view. But on the Republican side, the question is, how do you actually change this? Because clearly, with Donald Trump being somebody who has been on the ballot 3 times now, the discontent for him is really, really imbued and embedded in the minds of these voters. And it, again, is coming in a portion of the state that you cannot expect. You cannot expect Donald Trump to do well here in the election following.
I really just don't know. The big worry for me is how many... To be fair, Israel and Gaza and that whole conflict and the Palestinian genocide, it is an issue that has a fair amount of, disapproval from the average American in polling. Most Americans do not like what is happening in Gaza. However, when it comes to older Democrats, I don't feel like it has, and even a lot of younger Democrats, but I think it's mostly younger Democrats that are so upset. I don't think it's a deal breaker when it comes to voting for Biden for most older Democrats. I think it's like a concern they have, but not the end of the world to them. It's mostly younger, tapped into the internet, really socially aware, constantly mad about every new issue they find out about that the Republicans are doing or the Democrats are doing or America is doing or whatever genocide's happening, and feeling as though they have a moral responsibility to abstain their vote. That's most of these people. And I don't know if the majority of Biden's low approval rating really comes from the Gaza, Palestine, Israel stuff, as much as it just comes from the he's old talking point being really unanimously repeated and popular. I really think most of the low approval rating is just he's old, not the Palestinian genocide. I think they're just kind of topics that coincide with each other.
These primary results. Ingham County, Another county that Democrats look for core support, and that has been crucial to their victories in the past. Instances like when we take a look at the Michigan governor's race back in 2022. Ingham County gave Gretchen Whitmer 69% of the vote. If you want to take a look, too, at the history here, back in 2020, Biden won there by 32. In 16, Clinton won there by 27. But what's interesting is that you go all the way back to 2012, when Barack Obama won across the state by 9 points, 28-point margin of victory in Ingham, Michigan. So how did Biden improve despite the overall state shifting towards the right? Well, the question here is just more so, how did this survive? How did Biden end up surviving a huge shift in county margin? I mean, you can take a look here. There were 20 counties that were blue. There were just 11 in 2020, and yet Biden still won the state, right? And the answer here is that counties like Ingham and Washtenaw and Kalamazoo and Kent were giving the Democratic Party victories. They were becoming the suburban regions of the state that were very, very rapidly turning against the mainstream GOP and turned out in full force in the 2022 midterm elections. But it is in these counties that Republicans, if combined with Donald Trump's ability to win the rural regions of the state and run up the margins in other parts of this state, that you would find that if they were like the 2012 margins, Republicans would win here easily. I mean, take a look at Kent, Michigan. Kent County, Michigan, when Barack Obama won the state by 9 points, Mitt Romney here won by 8. In 2008, Barack Obama only beat John McCain by 0.5.
Dude, I remember the 2012 election. God, I remember going to bed. I think I had school the day before. I remember going to bed, and I think my parents went to vote like while I was like at school, so I didn't go with them. And I just went to bed, and I remember, like, waking up at, like, maybe 5 or 6 a.m. Like, it was pretty early. My mom being like, Obama won. I was like, cool. And I went back to sleep. Because I think I was 13, maybe? Yeah, I would have been 13. I didn't really care. I didn't care about politics all that much. I think I wanted Obama to win, because my mom and my stepdad wanted Obama to win. But, like, I didn't really have a horse in the race at the time.
52%. This margin here was astronomical, and the rest of the state was so solidly blue. I mean, take a look at this, right? Democrats were winning the county map. That rarely happens, right? They were rarely ever able to do this. And Michigan was solid blue, even down neighboring Indiana, which is now Trump plus 20 country, was Obama territory. Kent, Michigan, though, just 0.52%. So in the span of around 12 years, it has turned into Biden winning there by 6.1, to Gretchen Whitmer winning there by 10 points. And in 2024, very well, could end up being more Democratic, especially with this high level of discontent for Donald Trump. It is these Nikki Haley voters that do exist across the state, but very much exist in the counties that matter the most to the Democratic and Republican Party, that you will find that Donald Trump and Nikki Haley in this race was sort of like a proxy war for what we might be able to expect this coming November election.
So he's basically arguing that Nikki Haley votes are protest votes against Trump in the same way that, like, votes against Biden in the primary are, like, protest votes against Biden. Those are, like, examples of people who are highly unlikely to vote Biden or vote at all during the election, while this is a good show of people who maybe swing over to Biden during the election or don't vote at all. This could be a chunk of people who are taken from Trump during the general.
I think at the end of the day, when you're looking at Nikki Haley's large amounts of support.
What was turnout like? Let's check. More than 1.8 million Michiganders voted. Up to around 22% of registered voters, not nationwide, statewide. Yeah, it's not really a lot of registered voters in the state, honestly. Is that high turnout for a primary? I would assume primaries have way lower turnout than general elections, but I mean, that's surprisingly low. Less than 30% turnout of registered voters? That's crazy.
In regions that Donald Trump would desperately need to win in the election, it does answer a lot of your questions about what's going to happen come this November. President Trump will likely lose in many regions of this state simply because he has turned off too many moderate and independent voters that historically, and I mean this earnestly, historically have voted very right-wing. This isn't just some fluke election where Mitt Romney did well or John McCain has done well. These are genuinely very strong Republican voters, bases of the state that used to be just so conservative. And it's not that there's all of a sudden this massive population influx or huge amounts of Democratic voting bases just all of a sudden springing up in these regions of the state. These are parts of Michigan that Republicans used to rely on for victories, and victories could not come without them. And now they have turned towards the Democratic Party. The victories seem to be further and further out of reach. I'm interested to see, though, what does happen in this election, because this is an indication that there is problems on both sides of the aisle. Right? I think the reason for making this video in the first place was that there really wasn't much focus on Donald Trump's problems in this primaries and more so on Joe Biden. I think we've heard everything that there is to be said about the Michigan Democratic primary from the mainstream media, from people on social media, from party leaders in Michigan and outside of the state. I think this is something that we have definitely seen coverage for. And I honestly think, the takeaways here, I don't necessarily always agree with them, right? But I think what I do think is being, unfairly or just inadequately represented in the media is that this victory for Donald Trump was not this massive victory. Nikki Haley getting 27% in the state where she was supposed to lose by 50, 60 points, ended up losing by around 40, does say that in a swing state like this, you should listen to your voters the same way that Democrats should listen to them.
I really hope the Biden campaign focuses its attention in the right places here. Like, the places where the swing states where Nikki Haley had the strongest poll, they need to go to the districts, down to the district where Haley had the strongest poll, and try to get those people to vote Biden in the general. That would be big. Man, I hope the Biden campaign knows what they're doing. Thank you for sending this to me. I like getting myself brushed up on what's going on in the... caught up and informed on what's happening with the polling. I appreciate that. Let's talk elections. I'll go ahead and drop the link to the video in chat for those of you guys who want to watch the original video. There you guys go. It's from Let's Talk Elections. Well, alrighty. Comment down below if you think things are looking good for Biden or bad for Biden. Like, when this goes out as a video, go ahead and comment. I'm really curious. Right now, I feel a lot less doomer about the state of the election after this video, but who knows? Things still aren't looking great for Biden. His approval ratings are quite below Trump's, which is still surprising when you consider how many Americans Trump got killed with COVID. It's very surprising.